as well as delete max. And within those, we were using primitives like percolate up and percolate down. There were two uh, other operations which we kind of could not understand, at least I could not understand. So let me explain that now. We looked at that. So one was increase key, decrease key, the pair, which are symmetric, and another was remove. Well, increase key was relatively easy. Well, it just says that you just increase the value at a particular index by certain delta. So essentially, it is going to make elements of I as elements of I plus delta, but that elements of I might not remain at that place. So you are increasing the priority of that element. So we need to percolate it up. Right? So that essentially is what is being done. So elements of I is elements of I plus delta. And then the new place for that particular newly found element needs to be changed depending upon how much is the current priority of that process, current priority of that element. So that gets automatically taken care of with percolate up. Whatever is the new place, we move that element to that place, right? So this is how we can now implement new operations like increase key by taking advantage of the primitives such as percolate up. In a similar manner, decrease key will do a percolate down exactly in a similar manner, where except that we have to take care of that all the priorities are positive. So that is one small issue that we need to worry about. But otherwise, elements of I become same as elements of I minus delta. And then we do a percolate down, right? So there is some flag which we need to set. Ignore that for now. And then elements of new I, whatever is the new position after you percolate that lower priority process, lower priority element down, that becomes the new element, right? So that was our increase key and decrease key. This other operation, which was remove, that can be implemented in multiple ways, but one of the easier ways is that whenever we want to remove an element, we already know removal in some form, right? So we know removal in the form of delete max. So one of the ways in which an element can be removed is that we increase the priority of the process to the highest possible value. Increase the priority of an element to the highest possible value, and then do a delete max, right? So that could help us remove that particular element. So removal of an element at a particular index essentially means that I increase the key to the maximum possible. It could, you just want it to be whatever is the max element plus 1, but in our case you can actually set it to some infinity, and that's the reason why we have a large value as well as the small value in our case in our heap.h, so that infinity you can use for max heap, and the minus infinity you can use for the min heap. So we increase the key at that place to infinity and just do a delete max, and that will make sure that the element gets removed. The build heap procedure, which we slightly discussed, which means that if you are given a bunch of elements, you can create a heap out of it. So assuming that you are given some set of elements and it is not already populated, your array is not already populated, then you can populate that array with arbitrary set of elements, right? This is elements of I plus 1, because our heap array is one index based. So assuming that that gets copied and you have all the elements in some order available with you in the heap array, now you would like to change their position such that they maintain the heap order. So that needs to be done only for the interior nodes. The leaf nodes need not be touched. So we go over those elements, or rather we go over the so we go over the interior element. So we start from n by 2 minus 1, sorry, n by 2 in this case, and then go backwards such that we are going to move the elements down, right? So these are all the interior elements, and if required, they need to be moved down. Why do we not need to move them up? Because if you are moving appropriate elements down, the other elements are anyway going to get pushed up, right? And as far as leaf nodes are concerned, that we don't have to worry about, because they might be, I mean, they will turn out to be at the proper place. Even if you start from n elements and go all the way up to 0 or 1, that is not going to cause any problem, just that you will be doing some arbitrary extra operations. So we take each element and just move it down, each interior element, and just move it down, so that if there is some element which is larger and at the leaf, that automatically comes up. So once again, as you can see, most of these functions turn out to be relatively small once you have these percolate up and down primitives written clearly. Okay. Any questions on any of these functions that we discussed just now? Sorry, there may be a little bit of noise because it's raining nicely in the campus. Okay, so if there are no questions, I'll come to slides where so we looked at enough functions which allow you to have enough implementation of the heap that we require. Now let's use that heap ADT to implement some applications. The applications are, I mean, some things which are already known to us, but let's do that one by one. So one of the applications is in process scheduling, where we would like to schedule the process with the highest priority. There are a bunch of processes, you take the highest one and you schedule it. This can be done on single core or multiple cores. If you have single core, then you do a delete max and schedule it. Once it is over, then you do another delete max. If it is multiple cores and you can schedule multiple processes, you can perform multiple delete max equal to the number of cores. Right? There is another application which is like finding the kth maximum. This can be quite useful in some applications. So you are given a bunch of elements, and I'm not interested in finding the maximum, but I'm interested in finding the kth maximum. This can be useful in, for example, in case of game theoretic terms, where you two or more people are bidding, then finally whosoever wins, that winner does not pay the price that the person has opted for, but that person gets the item at a price which is the second maximum. Right? So there are some game theoretic guarantees on why that needs to be second maximum, etc. And there was Nobel Prize related to that. But anyway, so in that case, for example, second maximum might turn out to be useful. In general, we can think about a kth maximum. For example, we might want to make some decision based on what is the kth maximum, because you have space for k elements. So you want to decide what is the kth maximum value, and depending upon that, you might want to make a decision. So how do you find kth maximum? Well, that seems to be again reasonable. Using our heap data structure, you can just do k delete max, and that is going to give you the kth maximum. Contrast it with sorting. Okay, let me understand from you first. So what will be the complexity of kth maximum? If you do a k delete max, what will be the complexity? Okay, Aniruddha says order k, Abhishek says k log n, Suryanarayan says order k log n, Hari says k log n. Okay, so I understand k log n. Aniruddha, why do you say it is k? Okay, yeah, sure, no problem. So the reason why it is going to be k log n is that each delete max is going to percolate the elements up, right? So there are k delete maxes, and therefore each percolate up might take log n time because the height is bounded by log n, order log n, and therefore we will require k log n as the complexity of finding the kth maximum. Another way in which this can be done. So one another thing which we should not forget is that you might actually require to build the heap for this, because I am giving you only n elements, and finding the kth maximum in these n elements might require you to do build the heap, right? Thankfully, building the heap does not go beyond k log n, or it might go beyond k log n, we don't know, but that requires you order what time build heap? Does anybody remember from our last discussion? Okay, Murari says order n. Does anybody want to say something else? Okay, so last time we said that if you do n insertions, right? So Suryanarayan has given that answer. If you do n inserts, then you are going to require log n time per insert, right, in this heap. And therefore n elements might require n log n. So that is correct. However, if you are given these elements as an array, then you will be able to do better. And we did not go through the theoretical analysis, but it can be done in order n time. Right? So build heap can actually be done in order n time. I mean, the procedure doesn't change. It's just the theoretical analysis that needs to take into consideration, because there are I elements at, I mean, one element at root level, then there are 2 to the power 1 elements at the second level, 2 to the power 2 at the third level, and so on. So if you do some analysis, theoretical analysis of that, you will be able to bound the build complexity with order n. Note that actually if you do n inserts where elements are actually getting inserted in between, deleted in between, etc., then you do require order n log n. But if there are no intervening operations and you are given an array and you want to reorder it such that it follows the heap order property, that can be done in order n time. Okay. So now there is this n plus k log n which is going to come into picture. So build heap followed by k delete max. That will be the actual complexity of finding the kth maximum. Okay. Are there other ways in which you can find a kth maximum? If you don't know about heaps, how will you find kth maximum? Correct? Okay, so Suryanarayan and Murari are saying sorting, which I have not told you yet, but yeah. So sorting is another way in which you can solve this problem. You just sort this and it's going to take n log n time, and you just return the kth element, n minus k plus 1 maybe that element, and that is going to give you the kth maximum.
Sir, you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know how I muted myself. Okay, so how much part did I say on mute?
After sorting your button.
Okay, okay. So yeah, so the complexity of these two will have to be taken into consideration while deciding what is the kth maximum, and for that you need to know the k. Right? Okay, so okay, and this is BST. If child to parent traversal is possible, can also find kth maximum. Hmm. Okay, so let's see. So if you maintain the parent pointers, so which is reasonable, there is no harm in maintaining that, and you start from the max, and uh, are you talking about BST or AVL? So in BST, the structure can be very arbitrarily deep, and therefore just knowing the parent link might not be sufficient. You might want to maintain the link to the previous element. So then it will be more like a chain of from the maximum element to second maximum, because the maximum element might be somewhere above, whereas let's draw it here. So there might be a tree, and then the maximum element might be here, whereas the other second maximum, for example, might turn out to be here, right? So if we maintain only the link to the parent, that alone may not be sufficient. You'll have to still, I think it will be faster if you can maintain a link from the max to the second max, and then from second max to probably the third max, and so on. So this structure, yeah, if it is an AVL, then you have a larger control, because then things can't be arbitrarily deep and shallow. In BST, it might be a little challenging. Does that seem reasonable, Anirudh, or you have some thoughts? Yeah, sure. Okay, so once again, once you have all these functions written, the API written, the interface written, the ADT written, you'll be able to make use of those to implement these applications very fast. And that's the reason why some of you like to use vectors and maps very well in your C++ application. So we take the set of elements and build a heap. Right? Then we do k delete max, right? 0 to k minus 1 delete max, sorry, here, because we would like to ignore those elements. And then we do final delete max, which is going to give us the kth largest element. And okay, so one yeah, I don't think anything more is required to look at that code. It's exactly the same. This is the main crux of the code, so I'll skip that. But one question that comes up is, how do you find 75th largest element in a 100 element array? Good. Correct. So you should be careful about not only the complexity but also the efficiency, because you are studying PDS, and therefore you don't have to worry about 75th 75 delete max. You could possibly well, it won't be 75 largest element, might still be done possible. So you do a max heap and you do 25 delete max, and that will give you 75th largest element. You don't have to do in the opposite order. You don't have to iterate through this 75 number of times. You should be able to do it in 25 iterations. Right? Okay, sounds good. Let's come back to our Huffman coding that we have been promising, that okay, there is some way to do Huffman coding, and let's come back to this when we study heap. So that is our second application of Huffman coding, where if you recall, we had these different characters which had different frequencies. We sorted those based on frequencies. We came up with some code, but that was ambiguous. Then, therefore, we came up with some other code which was unambiguous, but then it was almost like a unary code, right? The number of characters was deciding the size of the length of this code. So we came up with some other code, and which turned out to be overall reasonable, which we called as prefix codes, but we didn't know how to come up with this code, and that is where Huffman coding comes into picture. So let's do that. Right? So what is the algorithm to come up with this particular tree? That is what we would like to study now. Right? So that is what Huffman Bhaiya have given us. Okay, so let's understand that. So one objective that we have is that the first of all of these should be non-prefix codes, which means that no interior node should be a valid code, right? So none of these should be valid codes. The valid codes must occur only at the leaf. Okay, so that was one. The other one was the elements which are more frequently occurring, for example E and T, these should be somewhere up in this tree, which means that they have shorter codes or shorter code lengths, right? So that's what we see here. E, T and A, these are at height 3 or level 3, whereas O and I, which are occurring later, which have smaller frequencies, are having level number 4, and therefore their code lengths are going to be slightly larger, and that is always going to happen. As you move something up, something else is going to come down, right? So that is one observation. So this part is all right. Right. So, yeah, so this part is okay. Now, using this knowledge, is there a way we can think of the algorithm that gets built, that can be built up using our knowledge of heaps and how to build this tree? Any thoughts? We are going to look at it, but in case you have any thoughts, feel free to share. So please think about it for a few seconds, that I am giving you all the necessary information and the background knowledge of heaps. You have to essentially build a heap. Okay? And how should that heap be built? Can anybody think of, or everybody should think about it? But yeah. Yeah, I think that 75th maximum, I said something wrong. It should not be a max heap, it should be a min heap. And then you do 25 delete min. Okay, so Abhishek says we can make a max heap based on frequency that we can use further. Okay, so in this case, uh, yeah, I would like some more details. So the higher level idea is correct, and I would like slightly more details on, maybe using this example itself we can say. So which elements will you choose, and how will you build it? Okay, so I'll tell you how that gets built up. So what we do is that we are going to build this heap bottom up, and therefore what we need to take into consideration are elements with the lowest frequency first. So what we are going to do is take O and I, which have the lowest frequency, and then create this subtree. Once you have created this subtree, the ordering between O and I doesn't matter because the code lengths are going to be the same, whether it is 0 or 1 doesn't matter. Okay. Okay, Anirudh, that's min heap based on frequency, delete min and give 1 for it and 0 to the rest. Min heap based on the frequency, I see. Okay. Okay. I understand this. Yeah, I understand this. There has to be there is a small catch here, which is indicated using this O and I. And as well as T and A. I'll come to that. So there is one small catch. The higher level idea for both Abhishek and Aniruddha have given, that seems to be reasonable. But there is one small change required, one small twist required. Right? So let's understand that. So O and I have the the lowest frequency. So their code should be the largest, and therefore O and I should come at the bottom of this heap, and therefore O and I are the ones that we will start with. And I build this subtree. Right? This subtree I need to now associate with the next element. Now what will be the next element? Well, obviously the next element should have been A, and then that should be combined with O and I's subtree, right? But I am doing something different here. Why is that happening, right? So there is a subtree built with T rather than O and I. Why would that be? Any thoughts on this one? I hope this problem is clear, right? Assuming that whatever tree I have drawn is correct, I should have linked O and I subtree with with A, right? But what I'm doing is I'm combining A and T together and not combining with O and I subtree. Why would that be? Even if you do it the other way, even if you link A, you are going to get a valid code. That is not a problem. But we are interested in something which can be theoretically proven to have some bounds, right? Which Huffman Bhai did it for us. But to balance tree height, okay, that is one possibility. Any other suggestions? Yeah, that is the twist. Once you understand this twist, then whatever we have studied so far, I think that will be clearer. I just want to give you a few more seconds in case somebody. Great, great observation. So the frequency of O is 7.68, frequency of I is 7.31, but the frequency of the subtree O and I is going to be the sum of the frequencies. How many times O or I is going to appear in the text, and that frequency is going to be, let's say, 14.99 or something like that, right? That 14.99 should be considered for the subtree OI. That 14.99 is larger than both T's frequency and A's frequency as well as E's frequency. So that is going to come up a little later. If you resort now these frequencies, OI comes at the top, then E, then T, and then A. And therefore at the bottom are essentially T and A, which need to be combined, and that is what essentially we do in this right subtree. I hope this point is clear, why we are combining these two and not combining A with OI subtree, right? So this is 14.99. This becomes some 17.22, and now E is at 12.02. So the lowest two are essentially these two, and therefore we combine them and then we combine these two here. Yeah, sure, I'll repeat that, no problem. So the smallest two frequencies are these, right? So our heap order is this one. So that part we know that we build this subtree. Now we have 4 elements rather than 5. The 4 elements are E, this subtree, T and A. ETA's frequencies are known, but the frequency of this subtree should be the sum of these two, which is 14.99. And if you resort these frequencies of these 4 elements, essentially you are going to get subtree here, highest frequency, then E, then T, and then A. And therefore we should choose T and A, the lowest 2 frequencies, and combine those here. And that is going to give you a better code than doing the A combined with the subtree. Right? Height balance is important, that is correct, Abhishek. However, the frequencies can be so skewed, that you would like to give the code based on the frequencies rather than the height balance. Right? So here, for example, the frequency of E might be maybe 90%. In that case, we would like to give it really a shorter code. And as you can see, even if you combine some of these, that is not going to come anywhere close to 90, and therefore E is going to come almost at the end, and it will have most probably a single letter code. Right? So it will not be a height balance tree, right? But we would like to go away from height balance. Height balance was there in our earlier codes when we were doing log n bits per operation, right? Or exactly 5 bits for the ASCII codes, 26 ASCII codes. That was the log n. So that was height balance, but that was not taking advantage of the frequency. So we actually want to give skewed distribution, but this skewed should be dependent on the frequency, the usage, and therefore this part turns. Murari, is this okay? Do you want me to explain anything else? Okay. Anybody else wants me to repeat any part? So once we have A and T combined, the combined subtree's frequency is whatever is A and T's combined frequency, which is going to be 17.22. So now we have 3 elements, E, subtree OI, and subtree TA. These 3 have these 3 frequencies, and E is the smallest frequency, 12.02. OI has the next smallest, which is 14.99, and therefore we are going to combine these two and get whatever is the next frequency, sum of these two, 14.99 plus 12.02, and that needs to be combined with this particular node to get the final tree. That is essentially the code, the tree, Huffman tree. How do I get the code out of this tree? Well, you just give 0 and 1 arbitrarily, and that is going to give you the Huffman code corresponding. There are theoretical guarantees on this, which we'll skip, but this turns out to be the code which gives us the optimal answer. So let's understand that algorithm. So consider two lowest frequencies, and that means that these are going to come at the bottom, combine to form a new frequency, right? This is very important, new frequency equal to the sum of the two. And remove the 2 frequencies, add the summed frequency. So the number of elements reduce from n to n minus 1 after combining these two, and you repeat this process, right, until you reach the top. So now you can see where that heap is getting used. The tree per se is not really the heap, right? So the tree that I showed you, this is not a heap, right? There are no values associated with this. Even if you put in your frequencies, yeah, the frequencies will actually satisfy the heap property. Actually, you are right. So Yeah, the frequencies will satisfy the heap property, but that is not where you actually use the heap. The heap is used in moving the elements. So you have a separate heap and you take these two frequencies and you push all the elements into that, right? So in the heap you insert n elements, then you do a delete min, you do another delete min. So you do first two delete mins and then push back a new element into the heap, into the same heap, which is the sum of these two. Now that will percolate down or remain somewhere and so on, right? So now you have n minus 1 elements. Again remove two frequencies, do a delete min, two delete mins, and then go on repeating this until from n minus 1 you come to n minus 2, n minus 3 and so on until a single element remains, right? And as you remove, you go on building this tree that I showed on the previous slide. That becomes the Huffman tree, using which you can get the Huffman code. Yeah, so finding the lowest frequency element can be done using heaps. Okay, and in fact, it gets used in compression algorithms like gzip and winzip, as well as in image formats and video formats like JPEG and MP3. Because there are codes which are more often occurring, right? So gzip, winzip are on documents, and there are some codes which are some letters which we use more often. Similarly, in JPEG as well as MP3, unless your image is very random or video is very random, typically there will be a large background having similar hue and similar colors, RGB values, and therefore storing it in the Huffman coding format will turn out to be much better space-wise in case of JPG as well as in video formats. All right. Any questions so far? Okay, so then I'm going to ask you to build the heap using, I'm going to give you some numbers before we look at the Huffman codes. Let me see how much time I have 12 minutes. Okay, so I'll be able to do. Let's first look at the code, or maybe. So this is one input which the code takes, right? So you can specify these frequencies coming from a file. So the first number indicates how many elements are there, and then these are the frequencies of these terms and so on. So essentially think about it as 10, 15, 12 as different frequencies, and then you have to build up the tree corresponding to it. The code actually turns out to be relatively small once you have the tree.h, which we had earlier, which is going to build this Huffman tree. So we are going to make use of our tree earlier. And then there is heap.h, which is Huffman heap.h, which I show. Which is very similar to our heap, except that it might have some small changes. Maybe some functions are removed because you don't need to worry about, let's say, remove and so on, right? So some functions are removed, but otherwise most of it remains the same. For example, get parent, left, right, percolate, up, down, etc. So all of these remains the same. So this is a rather simplified version of heap. You can use as well the same heap, that is not a problem. Okay, the functions remain the same. How does the code look like? I'm going to remove this. Let's come to main. I'm going to take inputs from a file, I mean inputs from the user, but you can redirect it. You make use of the heap as well as a tree. I push the elements into the heap, and then I run Huffman code using the heap as well as the tree, and then I print the codes. Right? What does the Huffman do? Okay, let's first look at what is pushing to heap is. Essentially, you go over all the elements, find out the data. This is a min heap, so I just reverse these values, right? And actually what I have done is I'm continuing to use the same code. So it's actually a max heap, but I'm inserting data elements as the negative of the values. So therefore, I can use a max heap, which gets converted into a min heap, right? So that is a small trick here, but yeah, you can either build a separate min heap or either way is okay. For the tree, I'm going to create a new element, right? So I need to build up this tree, Huffman tree. So that is our TT. And then I'm going to insert in the heap that particular element. Okay. So that I just need to do for every element, and that creates those many elements in this tree. The Huffman part is essentially what the algorithm that we saw, where we have a heap as well as a tree. While that heap contains the elements, right? So in heap, if you recall, we have inserted all the n elements. So we are going to do 2 delete max, and using those 2 delete max, we are going to create a new node having the sum of the 2 frequencies, and then join that in the heap. And in the tree, we are going to essentially perform, if you recall this add child method, that happens. So this is the first node, this is the second node, and using these two, I'm going to create a third node, for which I'm going to do these 2 children, right? So that is forming the subtree that we were talking about. And we have to also insert in the heap. Yeah, so this is the insertion in the heap, which I need to push back as the frequency, which is the sum of the frequency of the 2. And that I need to repeat until there is a single element left in the heap, which is essentially going to be the final element, which is going to be becoming the root in the tree, right? So the frequency that remains in the heap, that is going to be corresponding to the root's frequency. And once I have this tree built up, the heap is kind of empty or has single element, and the tree is going to give me the Huffman codes. So for that, I need to print the value. So that printing, I think, must have changed inside that H heap. Yeah, I think the printing also remains the same. So I'm just printing the element. So let's try to compile this code. It won't compile because I need to give the heap H heap.cpp, I suppose. Compiles. This should not work directly because it will wait for my input. So heap Huffman input.txt, and that is going to give me all the processing that it did. It inserted these elements into the heap. The initial heap is like this. This is our actually max heap. As you can see, -12 is smaller than -1, but then the negative values I can use to essentially have the min heap, and delete max is going to give me essentially the minimum element. So I need to flip this sign, and then I'll have those elements. So all of this debugging happens, and finally the tree, Huffman tree, I get has these codes corresponding to these elements based on the frequencies that I have. Okay. If I give you some other input, it gets a different code. So these are very carefully made such that the code might turn out to be very different than what you anticipate. Right? Then there is 3 input, and you can play around with different values of these frequencies, and so you get different codes for these different frequencies. All right. Any questions so far? Basu says, aren't alphabets encoded using UTF or ASCII? So where is Huffman coding used? So when you are, so that is correct, that it will be encoded using ASCII values or UTF, but those are also need to be transmitted or passed or stored, which means that you are going to, so one possibility is that you can actually send directly the ASCII values, which was our log n space requirement for, let's say, n elements. right? So that is our UTF-8 or 16 and ASCII values. That part is okay. But then you can do better when you are trying to compress the code, right? So I'm storing my this text file which I have opened in VI, that is going to get stored in UTF-8 format. So that part is okay. But if I have to compress it, then I can take advantage of the frequencies. That maybe the element E is appearing more number of times. Otherwise, the size will not reduce. Right? You have to make use of this frequency. Otherwise, everything is going to take log n space. So that is where the Huffman coding will get used. Right? So when I, for example, this is heap huffman.cpp, right? So if I ls minus l, its size is 1262 bytes, right? So that those many bytes are required. Each character takes 8 bits. Now if I try to gzip this, okay, so that is stored in almost half the size, right? So why did that happen? Because there were some characters which were used more frequently than this heap Huffman than some other characters. So that's the advantage that Huffman coding could give us. Is that reasonable, Basu? Any other concerns, questions here? Okay, so let me go back to our presentation. I think there is only one slide remaining, hopefully. Yeah, and that is about sorting. So this is the first sort we are going to look at amongst all sorts of sorts. And now that we know about delete max, delete min, you know how this heap sort is going to work. So given n elements, we essentially build a heap, which is order n time. And then we do n delete max, and that is going to give you a sorted order. Right? So we just store it. So this n elements requires n storage. Building a heap requires order n time. N delete max requires n into log n time. And storing each element is order n time as well as order n space. So overall, we can do a heap sort in n log n time and 2n space. Okay. So yeah, so one question you can think about is, can you do that in situ heap? And that can be done essentially using that hide back function which I was talking about. So what is happening is that you are given n elements, but when you are building the heap, you have looked at I elements, right? So what is remaining here is n minus I elements, right? And you have built the heap using I elements. So essentially, if you combine these together, you require total n space. You don't require total 2n space. And therefore, you can make use of the same array where you can hide the element towards the later part of the array, because you are looking at only I elements. Or you have looked at I elements, so the n minus I elements can be somewhere else. I mean, somewhere else meaning the later half of the array. So that is essentially hide back function, but I mean, there is nothing sacrosanct about it. You can use a separate array if you want to make use of that. So the algorithm again turns out to be really very small, right? The complexities are already inside delete max. Yeah, and of course there is build heap also that is required. So we do a hide back of that element, whichever you have removed from the element, and now n minus 1 elements remain, and you just do a build heap of essentially do a delete max over these n minus 1 element. So this hide back is storing it at n minus 1th location in the first place, then n minus 2th location, n minus 3th location, and so on. And for the remaining n minus I elements or I elements, we are going to perform the delete max, and that is going to give you a sorted order. Okay. Any questions on this part? Okay, so that I'll skip for now because the code is almost the same, and that completes our discussion on priority queues or heaps. We will look at either sorting or graphs in the coming lectures. First, of course, we have to look at both. Let's see how many we are able to cover. So we have 2 weeks remaining. So we'll try to cover as much as possible out of these 2 weeks. All right. Any questions so far? I'll wait for the questions. All right. So if there are no questions, we'll stop here. See you next week.